Welcome to Never Again Is Now, a podcast about anti-Semitism. I am Phyllis Zimbler Miller, co-founder of the free nonfiction Holocaust theater project, The Edge of the Wedge. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest and with a small Jewish community. My grandparents emigrated at the turn of the 20th century from Latvia and Russia. My U.S. Army officer husband and I were stationed in Munich only 25 years after the end of World War II. This podcast is in partnership with Evelyn Marcus, a Dutch Jew and the daughter of Holocaust survivors, who's featured in the documentary Never Again Is Now. A psychologist, she immigrated in 2006 to the US because of the rise in anti-Semitism. I'm really excited about our guest today, Liza Wiemer, because I found her after reading a book review about her book, her YA book, The Assignment, which she will tell you about. And since then, we've developed a relationship, and I'm so excited for all of you to hear from her today. Liza?
Thank you so much, Phyllis. It's truly an honor to be here with you and on the podcast. So I am the author of The Assignment, and I'm thrilled to say that it has won and received several honors, including being named a Sidney Taylor Notable Book for 2021. So a little bit about me. I have spent the vast majority of my life here in Wisconsin, and I grew up in a community that had very few Jewish people. I cannot ever remember not feeling like an other. Anti-Semitism was something that was just a part of my life. I had swastikas carved into my desk. I was asked, where is your tail and horns? Which was completely shocking because I wasn't even aware of that kind of anti-Semitic trope. A very unforgettable experience to me happened to me when I was in middle school. I was on a playground with a bunch of kids that I didn't know too well. And suddenly a boy screamed out, "Heil Hitler, kill the Jews." And I remember freezing and looking at this boy, and I had a decision to make at that very moment. Stay silent or speak up. And I made the decision to speak up. I said, very quietly, but directly to him, it said, "Well, I guess that means that you're going to want to kill me." And he looked at me like, "Why would I want to do that?" And he actually even said that. And I said very quietly again, "Because I'm Jewish." And the shock on his face, he was stunned. And that was it. Never had any interaction with him again. That left a major impression on me. What I found as I grew up and went to high school in this community, I gravitated to other Jewish students, and I became involved in Temple Youth Group, became a member of our local board, then our regional board. I was president, and then I was also on national board for NIFTY. And so I formed a community, and I had tremendous Jewish pride, and I love being Jewish, but I also felt like I very much had to hide my Jewish identity when it came down to the outside world, because I learned at a very early age that by being out there, it meant that my life was in danger. I couldn't exactly hide it. My maiden name was Goldberg. So, the half a second anyone heard my name, they stopped seeing me as a person and they saw me first and foremost as Jewish. And so I grew up with this feeling of, I love being Jewish. I love so much about it. Yet also this fear that constantly was a blanket that overshadowed being a part of the secular world.
Very interesting. I just realized that although I was the only Jewish child in my classes in Elgin, Illinois, my last name Zimbler, which actually comes from the instrument in a klezmer band and cymbal, but most people didn't realize it was Jewish. I didn't have Goldberg. That probably helped me. Because we have so much to talk about, I want to make sure we don't skip the fact that the assignment is based on a true story, inspired by a true story. And I want you to tell that true story and then how you changed it. Because when I told someone the plot of the assignment and then said it's inspired by a true story, the person, I won't call her out, said, someone who cares about anti-Semitism said, no teacher in the United States would give that assignment.
Yeah.
Part where it's true. So I want you to talk about that assignment and also what people have been telling you as you have moved into the public light with this topic. So go ahead.
So I'm not at all surprised that this friend said that to you, because it is absolutely shocking. How I came to write this novel is truly remarkable. And I don't want to spend time going into those details, but I do want to tell people that they can go to my website, LizaWiemer.com, and there is a button.
Spell it. You better spell it.
Yeah, so it's LizaWiemer, as in mom, ER.com, LizaWiemer.com. And there is a button that you can click that says behind the scenes for the assignment. But to summarize quickly, I happen to be in this upstate New York town where the assignment was given when it exploded all over, the internet. And it was just a series of remarkable events where I happened to see the article, opened up the article and went, oh my gosh, I'm in this small town. And as I started reading more about the assignment, and so this is what I read. The headline was something like, New York teens refuse to do assignment advocating for the Holocaust. So that caught my attention. Clicked on the link. I'm in this small town. It was Oswego. And I started reading about it, and that was exactly what the students had to do. It was, I didn't learn more of the details, so I'm going to share those details with you now just for context purposes. But the students were asked to write a position paper. Pro was exterminate Jews, and con was sterilization, work camps, and ghettos. And this was based on the 1942 Wannsee Conference, where the top 15 Nazis came together to finalize, and implement the final solution of the Jewish question. In other words, the Holocaust. It had already been going on, but this was going to be the massive implementation of the plan. So this was, the teacher asked these students to, divided up these students, and they had to write a position paper. And two brave teens said, this is reprehensible. We're not going to do it.
Neither teen was Jewish. Is that correct?
That is correct. And yes, that is correct. And one had gone on a program to Europe and had gone to some concentration camps, and that had left a major impression. And the other one, to my knowledge, has someone in their family that is Jewish, I believe through marriage. And so they both had a sensitivity to that issue. And to my knowledge, no one else had any kind of Jewish connection. So they said, this is wrong. This is reprehensible, and this assignment should never be given again. So I read about this and I thought, oh my goodness, these teens are so brave. I have to meet them. And lo and behold, I walked into the independent bookstore where I was having my book event, looked up, and there was one of the teens, Jordan April. The two teens were Jordan April and Archer Shurtleff. And I went, oh my goodness, it's the world famous Jordan. And we'll go from there.
Jordan's female. I always like to point out because
that's correct.
That it's a female and a male. And also to clarify that Liza was coming to sign a different book of hers. She didn't automatically pull it out of the air and sign it.
That's correct.
Right. And so she wrote this book. I want to get to what's happened since, because she's now gotten all kinds of, I don't know if the word is feedback. So that event took place in 2017. Am I right? But
that's correct.
But she is now getting reports of many, many more assignments that are continuing to be given in the United States. And perhaps you could share just a few, just examples, including the one I like about, if it's okay with you, the Muslim teen girl who spoke up, right?
Yes. So I made a decision fairly quickly that I wanted to write a book inspired by this incident in Oswego. And that was just a launching point. When I was there, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a unique assignment. And I was shocked to find out that these assignments are being given on a regular basis. And there are a few there, and when I say regular basis, there are times where I'm notified by someone 4 or 5 times a week about assignments like this.
You mean 4 or 5 different people?
By different people. And they've shared, I've heard from parents, I've heard from students, I've heard from individuals who they themselves have experienced something like this. The one that you were mentioning about this Muslim girl, that happened in Ohio. I believe it was Columbus. And the teacher gave an assignment to do, it was who was responsible for the Holocaust. And you had to rate a number of, things on the list. And one of them was the Jews who did not rise up. And another one was the Jewish God who, failed his people and didn't protect his people. I mean, it's absolutely reprehensible. And students had to put a number, a percentage next to all these different categories. And those were 2 of them. And this young woman said, this is wrong. I tried to follow up and find out what happened. I know many Jewish organizations got involved and tried to get more details from this young woman. She didn't want to reveal her school. She did say that she had spoken to the teacher. What I did find out, and this, by the way, was posted on Twitter, is that there were other students across this country who said, oh, I received that assignment. So it wasn't a unique situation at all. It must have been a part of published curriculum. And speaking of published curriculum, toward the end of the 2021 school year, I was contacted about an assignment given in an Irvine, California high school. It was for an AP World History class, and the students were asked to recreate the 1932 Reichstag election and present the Nazi perspective. Now, one brave teen said, this is wrong. The teacher's response to her was, it's nothing personal. So she was not going to take that as an answer. She found the assignment reprehensible. She talked to her parents about it. She wrote, a really beautiful explanation of why this was offensive to the teacher. And then the teacher said, well, this is a part of curriculum that had been developed through Brown University. And I got it from someone who was Jewish. And so they were using that as an excuse, as if that's okay. And that's not an excuse at all. It is a reprehensible assignment. And what's even worse is that the assignment continued, and a student said to the teacher, am I being racist enough? Am I presenting my position in a racist enough way? And that student was praised for his actions. So what ended up happening is I gave them a tremendous amount of background to share with the school. That was not enough. And thankfully, we were able to bring in the ADL, and the ADL reached out to, the principal, the assistant principal, and to the teacher. And they agreed to never teach the assignment again, but the teacher refused to recognize that it caused any kind of harm. What is most shocking about this situation is that this assignment was also given in another school in the area, and no one protested against it. No one said a word about it. Now, the parent that was involved in this was extremely upset. She contacted the developers of this curriculum and received an answer saying, oh, we are no longer distributing this curriculum. Now, you and I both know if there is a defective product, that defective product is recalled. This defective assignment was never recalled, so it's still being taught in schools across the United States. Do we have, do the students have the wherewithal to recognize how reprehensible it is to support the Nazi point of view? Because, we're not seeing headlines about this. This didn't even hit the news. So how many schools are still teaching this curriculum ongoing, and it is met with silence, and students are just supporting this perspective within the classroom?
Here's a tough question that you may not want to answer. I assume that it was about another ethnic group who saw a curriculum the teacher would recognize that it's offensive. Why do you think that teachers like in Oswego and here in Irvine don't look at that assignment and say, this is reprehensible? This is giving a platform to the worst, the lies that cause the murder, not death, the murder of 6 million Jews and then Romani and Jehovah's Witnesses and homosexuals, et cetera, I don't mean et cetera is not important, but I'm just saying, how can teachers not look at that and say, even to let students do it in class is to inoculate them with this poisonous thinking? So why does this happen?
So I want you to know that this is happening with assignments where teachers ask students to give 3 good reasons for slavery and 3 bad. Or they will ask their students to, I just heard a story yesterday from a mother who told me that her 2nd grader was asked to recreate the Underground Railroad. And all of these assignments are extremely offensive. There's a term called curriculum violence, which means it causes emotional or physical or spiritual harm to students. And so it's not just these assignments are not just surrounding the Holocaust or anti-Semitism. I heard about an assignment that students were asked to recreate the Trail of Tears, which is deeply offensive to Indigenous people. So unfortunately, across the board, we are seeing assignments like this, and it has to stop. I think that there's a few things that are going on here. I think that sometimes teachers believe that a reenactment is a fun way to teach history, but it actually is offensive because there is no way that we could ever possibly recreate history in such a way to really have students understand what transpired. This is not the way to teach empathy to what happened to individuals who had been enslaved. We cannot even begin to impart with our students what that was like. And it's deeply painful and it's deeply offensive, just like it's deeply painful and deeply offensive to every Jewish person who, understands that 6 million of our family members were murdered during the Holocaust. And to support the Nazi point of view, oftentimes what I hear is, well, we're just teaching history. And what I will say to people is this: teach history, let them understand what their position is without asking students to advocate for it, or to recreate it. So to say we want you to pretend you're a Nazi and present these perspectives, what happens is we're creating cognitive dissonance, meaning we're opening up the door and saying that the way our brain works, that there could be validity to these reasons. And you could say to me, well, come on, Liza, we all know there's no validity. Well, just look at society today. There are many people that truly believe that there's plenty of validity to these points. And so there are some things in life where we have to draw a very clear line, and this is one of them. This is reprehensible, it's immoral, and there is no wiggle room for advocating for the Holocaust or advocating, for the Nazi perspective, period. Just like I would say that there is absolutely no wiggle room and a clear moral line that we should never, ever, ever advocate to enslave people.
So what tools would you suggest? Let's talk about parents for a minute. If their students come home and their children do not have the courage, and I can understand, I'm not so sure I, as the only Jewish child in my classes, not so sure how courageous I would have been. What can parents do? Because I've been writing a lot of blog posts recently about learning to speak up about anti-Semitism, not to freeze when someone says something. I mean, I think your answer was so good, but also not to answer in anger, because then that just shuts it off. People don't hear. And I'm a big fan of assertiveness training that I learned a long time ago. You have to acknowledge what someone says, even if it's totally wrong, and then work to educate them. So do you have suggestions? Should parents go directly to the ADL? I mean, let's give them some tools.
So first of all, I want to acknowledge to everyone that speaking up is really difficult. And there's a few reasons for that. One, I think we worry as parents that we don't want our child targeted. So if we speak up, are we going to be making waves for our child? We don't want them. We want our children to be liked. We want them to be welcomed. And we certainly don't want to make waves. So that is a normal reaction. Also, I think many people like to be polite. And so sometimes the instinct is, oh, I'm not going to get involved. I don't feel comfortable being involved. Or maybe it's not so bad. Maybe we can just get past this. But the problem is that if you don't speak up, it's going to just continue, and it's going to be sending the wrong message to the students within the school. I had a situation where a parent told me that her son had received an assignment to read parts of Mein Kampf, and she was horrified, and the child was traumatized. And a year later, it still bothered her because she didn't speak up. So this is what I say. I get it. I understand. And for the students out there that may be listening to this, my heart is with you. It is difficult. So here are a few suggestions. First of all, I truly believe that you should first, if you don't feel like speaking directly to that teacher, write a note and explain why this is, harmful to other students. We don't want to advocate or give any credence to white supremacist belief systems. This isn't okay. It doesn't just affect, white, it doesn't just impact Jewish people. It impacts people, other marginalized groups. And you can list reasons why this isn't okay. If the teacher doesn't acknowledge this, then go and speak to the principal. If you need someone to advocate with you, definitely get a parent involved, but also speak to other students, explain why it bothers you, and see if you can get others to speak up with you so that you're not alone. Because the more that you can have with you, the stronger you are. Now, I've seen two things happen. I've seen teachers immediately respond by, oh my goodness, you are so right. This is not okay. And, we're going to stop this assignment and I'm going to let everyone know why, and we're done. I've seen the other side also where they dig in and say, I'm the teacher, I'm the authority, I know better, and that's it. And they keep going forward. So next step, obviously, is getting an adult to support you. I highly recommend that if you are still struggling, bring in the ADL. They work on these situations every single day. Contact them and say, I have a critical issue. I need help now. And they will, get on board and intervene and speak to the school. You can also contact your local JCC. There may be someone if you have a local Holocaust center, there may be an educator who may be able to help you with this. So, talk to other Jewish organizations. I think that every person has to make that decision as to whether or not they want to put it online. When you put it online, there's a chance that it's going to go viral. There's a chance that, there are going to be people that are going to argue with you and say, what's the matter with you? There's nothing wrong with this assignment. It's perfectly acceptable. When you go online, the potential is that there's going to be hurt that you could never imagined. For the teacher, for you as a student, for the community, sometimes you need to do it. Sometimes in order to speak up, because you're not getting anywhere with an assignment like this, the school must be called out. And so I would never tell a person which way to go, but I do recommend, first and foremost, having the respect to speak to that educator. What we forget sometimes is that teachers are people, and These assignments are often misguided and thoughtless. I truly believe that the vast majority of them are not because they're hateful, awful, vicious human beings, although that indeed can be true. Like we saw with that coach in Massachusetts that was using anti-Semitic plays for his football team. You know, when you're using Jewish slurs on a regular basis for football plays, now I think you've got a conscious decision. But what if you have an assignment like the one I just told you about, recreate the 1932 Reichstag election, and you've received it from a reliable source as part of your curriculum, and you as an educator really don't know much about the Holocaust at all. You're not an expert. It's part of what you teach. Maybe, you know, you've read some Holocaust books, but you really truly do not recognize the damage that it's done. This teacher, it's wrong to give an assignment like that, but let's educate and let's ask that this never be taught again, and then make sure that it's replaced with proper curriculum.
With
That's
that,
where I stand.
it's fabulous. And you know, I could speak to you with forever, but we wanted to get this to a certain length because we want to encourage people to listen to it and learn from it. And I just want to echo that I do think in many cases, people just don't know any better. And so it is our responsibility to calmly, as long as we're not putting ourselves in physical danger, of educating people. So I want to thank Liza Wiemer so much for all the work that she's doing, not just her award-winning novel, but now she's become a spokesperson for these kinds of assignments and for encouraging young people and adults. And I want to thank those of you listening to our podcast. Do check out Evelyn Marcus's documentary, Never Again Is Now, which you can find on her website at Join Never Again Is Now. And check out my free Holocaust theater play, Thin Edge of the Wedge.com, that can also teach about the Holocaust in a way that young people can relate to. And whenever you can, speak up against anti-Semitism and all hate.
Thank you so much, Phyllis.